Welcome back to Perth. Question for you, are the Lions going to get the challenge they need in the build-up to their test series against the Wallabies? Are they going to have the sort of opposition that will prepare them? It's always a question for any Lions tour. And I had a chat with Hugh Woozencroft on talkSPORT yesterday, and he asked me that question.
Western Force will away in the first match for the Lions. That's a week on Saturday. Is that going to be a tough welcome in the first game down under for Andy Farrell's side?
Well, I think it's going to be a mix, in all honesty. So the Wallabies have announced their training squad, which has given us a really good idea of kind of where Joe Schmidt, their head coach, is thinking in terms of the squad that will take on the Lions. It's a lot of players that we've seen from last year where they looked a lot better. There was a lot of green shoots there. But one of the interesting talking points in the build-up to the tour has been, is Joe Schmidt going to allow his Wallaby players to play for their club teams, essentially, in the build-up to face the Lions? And with the Western Force, it's a bit of a mix. So there's some of the guys that are going to be going into Wallabies camp, some of the guys that are staying with the Western Force. So you wouldn't necessarily say it's a full-strength team. Hopefully, from the Lions' point of view, we do see them tested, because they have to be, right? This is a group of players, and yes, they're the most talented players in Ireland and Great Britain coming together, but it's still coming together in a short space of time. So hopefully the Lions do get tested. In all honesty, Hugh, I expect the vast majority of the warm-up games, the Lions to win them. I guess if you're looking at it in terms of performances in Super Rugby, it's the Brumbies and the Reds in Queensland and ACT that, on paper at least, are going to be their toughest challenges.
Very quickly, Alfie, you'll be following the Lions, so what's your travel schedule looking like?
Well, yeah, I'm in Perth now. This is my longest stay. It's going to be 11 nights in total, and then it's looking like Brisbane, Sydney, ACT, Adelaide, back to Brisbane first test, Melbourne second test, Sydney again for the third test. So yeah, fair bit of travel in the next few weeks. I cannot wait for it. We will keep you across everything here on talkSPORT. It's going to be really, really exciting. So don't forget that talkSPORT is your host of the Lions Tour on UK radio. That's who I'm out here for. And I'm on my way now to head to the Western Force themselves. Let's have a chat with them. Let's see how they're feeling ahead of that game, one that comes around once every 12 years. Matt, firstly, thanks for your time and nice to meet you. Can I start by throwing back 12 years, which seems mad, by the way, but memories of 2013, captain for the Western Force when they played the Lions?
Yeah, it's great to the Lions coming back to this year. It sort of allows me time to reflect back and remember the great memories. To actually run out there at Subi Oval, playing against the Lions. Just talking the other day, going up against Sexton, Alwyn Jones, O'Brien, those sort of names now are in the history book, so it's pretty exciting to see the Lions return to Perth Shores.
And obviously, for a lot of our audience, our focus is often on the Lions and who gets selected and how special the tour is. For the Western Force or for the clubs that play these kind of warm-up games, or however you want to phrase them for the Lions ahead of the Test Series, how big is this match for the Western Force?
Yeah, it's big for the club to get the opportunity to play such a big brand in the game. Markets our game in WA pretty special, but then also the opportunity for the players. Some players might not ever play a test match, but this is as close as you can get to representing such a big game. But then also players that are on selection for test matches go out and give an opportunity to play against the best. So yeah, sort of threefold there, but big excitement also for the staff around here that get to be involved in the match week.
And having been involved in 2013 to now, how would you sum up, I appreciate it's a long period of time, but sum up kind of where Australian rugby has been since then? It's been quite a tumultuous 12 years, I suppose?
Yeah, probably around that 2010 to 13 period where probably Australia was going quite well. Consistent results both at Super Rugby and then Test level. Probably took a bit of a dip, both on and off the field. We probably didn't capture the hearts and minds of people off the field well enough from the product we're delivering and how we connected community. But I think especially in the last 12 months, I think you've seen a rebound of the sport, especially in Perth, obviously with the Sevens here at the start of the year. Performance of the boys on the field, our connection off the field, which is growing and something that we want to get better at. And then the Lions to actually come, and then obviously we go into World Cups and stuff. So it's a massive period of sport. and it's something that we in Australia, but also in the Western Force, need to sort of make sure we capture and grow our game on and off the field.
Yeah, how pivotal is it then, this Lions series for the sport in Australia, and then, as you've just referenced, a couple of World Cups over the next few years?
Yeah, I think everyone's heard that Australians call it the golden decade. For us to actually launch that off in Australia, in Perth, with the Lions starting here, is something's pretty special. And I know the players like Dono, Whitey, are pretty excited by the opportunity to actually start that campaign, and even the ticket sales and the amount of people are now talking about our game in June. It is pretty exciting, and that will lead into a good test series for all of us.
Matt, the sporting landscape in Australia I always find really interesting in the way that AFL's huge in Victoria and rugby league kind of around Sydney. And so for rugby union, kind of take us into it of what is the challenge to get more eyeballs, get more viewership, particularly for you guys in Western Australia?
Yeah, it's obviously difficult not being the number one sport, not in Australia, but also not in our own state. So it's how do we do things differently? How do we don't go head to head with the AFL or rugby league? It's actually how do we look at our sport and what our sport can offer that no one else can do is international game. We're the only sport at no matter what level you can play, you can go around the world and jump into a rugby club and play our sport. And then obviously the opportunity of any size, any body, tall, small, larger, male and female now. We give an opportunity for all those walks of life to actually be part of our sport. And I think something that we're looking at here in particular is our connection to community. Actually, even just last night, I'm going down to my local club and Nick White's coaching the under-11s. That's something pretty special and something pretty unique that the players want to give back to the game, because that's where they started.
And what role does the Lions match in just over a week's time kind of play in that whole scheme?
It just promotes our game on the world stage again. It's not often you get that world-class all-in-one team and the opportunity for them to connect with us during the whole week. Going out to clubs, going out to just being around Perth is pretty special. Our UK friends, our Irish friends actually get to connect them in one spot, but then also puts rugby on the map for a whole week. I know we're talking at a government level, professional level, but community level, so we actually get rugby in the market for a longer period of time.
Nick, congratulations on the call-up, mate. What's the last 24 hours or so been like? Has it been a bit of a blur?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been pretty surreal. You sort of, you sometimes feel like a little bit of an imposter with everything going on, but no, it's been very special. Like, yeah, I don't think I've been able to stop smiling, which is, yeah, a little bit embarrassing at times, but no, very special.
And you said it was something that you hadn't given up on that dream. For this squad specifically, yesterday, did you have it kind of in the back of your mind that it could happen, or did it catch you out almost as a bit of a surprise?
I sort of just, I was controlling what I can, like I felt like if I had a good season, I'd put myself in a good position and just to continue to work hard. And, we had that wider training sort of hub here the other week, and, I had some good feedback from the coaches, and I was just sort of focusing on working on what they told me. And, the mantra was, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, you just got to keep working. So, yeah, I felt reasonably calm about it all, but there were definite nerves in the morning.
Well, who was the first person to message you?
I think I had to, I obviously called Dad and my mum and my stepmum, and then I think it was my best mate from Canberra, Pat Rumble, and Connor O'Shea from Sydney. We were sort of on the call and chatting to each other and, talking through the journey, and, they've been there along the way. So, no, it was very special.
Pretty nice moments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, for us in the north, like the build-up to the Lions tour is always massive. Can you just kind of give me the context for you guys of how big that game is going to be, one that comes around once every 12 years?
Yeah, I think, as you sort of said, it's massive, like, especially in Northern Hemisphere, like the build-up to it is insane, and especially over here, I was going out at a cafe the other day and people are already starting to talk about it, and you hear about, like, the Sea of Reds coming over, so hopefully we'll have the Sea of Blue out in force and be able to sort of battle them at Optus Stadium.
And sort of how good the Lions are going to be, how special would it be to give them not exactly the perfect start to their tour, be a bit of a problem for them?
Yeah, absolutely. That's our objective. Like, our objective is to go out there and be really competitive and put on a performance we're proud of. So, no, it would be very special, and that's something we're working towards. Can
I just ask you about a few of the Lions players? There's been loads of chat about their back row in the build-up to selection of, like, Tom Curry, Josh van der Fleer, Henry Pollock, like, just kind of Jack Morgan, those guys, and how competitive an area that's going to be.
Yeah, mate, I think you sort of look at that back row spot and it was very hotly contested. You know, we were watching them playing all the Six Nations and all those sort of games, and the amount of quality over in Europe in those positions is enormous. And then to sort of see them make up of their squad, it's really exciting. It's something, you know, the breakdown's going to be massively contested. You know, they seem to have picked a lot of guys who specialise in that area, and you know, we've all been sort of witnessing the rise of Henry Pollock, and I think that's really exciting. You know, someone like that's great for the game, and you know, Tom Curry's a world-class player. You know, he's one of the best in the world, and you've watched him at numerous World Cups sort of go out there and do his thing. And you know, a challenge for us is to sort of get up to that level and meet them there.
So I was going to say, so as Henry Pollock and his breakthrough, it's arguably been the story in England of the rugby this year. That's broken through and cut through over here as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I think, you know, a guy like that, he's got a real social media presence. He's got a presence around the world, and some of the things he's doing is, you know, very special. Not many people can do what he's done sort of in the attacking sphere of the game, and you know, I think there's a lot of respect for him and you know how he's risen up through the ranks very quickly.
So I've just got back to my hotel, enjoyed heading up to the Western Force, the first interviews I've done on the ground here in Australia, so nice to kind of start building up to the tour. I was speaking there, the first interview you heard was Matt Hodgson. He was the captain in 2013, and then Nick Champion de Crespignye, got the pronunciation right, the S is silent, who was called up to the Wallabies squad. It would be a debut for the Wallabies if he is to play at some point this year. So I spoke to both of them, got their views kind of on the tour generally. And the question I posed at the start of the video of will the Western Force give the Lions the challenge they need? Will the Lions more generally get the challenge they need? Is a talking point that we have on most Lions tours, less so probably to New Zealand, like those provincial games that they play against the Super Rugby sides from New Zealand, who traditionally are the strongest, are always generally pretty good. But in Australia, it's a talking point, and South Africa's the same. I was looking back at 2013, and the Lions absolutely smashed the Western Force in that game. And it was only the Brumbies, actually, they lost to by 2 points. And you would imagine, again, on this tour, the Brumbies is going to be probably their toughest game, followed by the Reds. So it's kind of the same as it was in 2013 in that regard. And it's where the game against Argentina potentially comes into its own. I know it's not a full-strength Argentina side, but it is a good Argentina side with experience. And I think that does have value for Andy Farrell and these Lions players as we look at a series. And it's always such a challenge for the Lions, right? Because coming together, they've had, one week's training camp in Portugal. They're then into an Argentina week, and then they're on tour. So actually building a game plan is so difficult. And I think it makes it extra difficult when you're not necessarily always getting the challenge, I suppose, that you probably hope you would. Like if you look at the fixtures for the tour this year. So Argentina have spoken about, Western Force. You then got the Reds that I think could be tough, New South Wales, Waratahs. Again, they weren't, the Reds and the Brumbies were the two best Australian teams in Super Rugby this year. So the Reds, the Brumbies, the invitational team, Australia and New Zealand, I'm unsure how good they're going to be. They might have some quite good names, but they might be a team that's patched together as well. And then the First Nations and Pacifica 15, which admittedly comes in between tests 1 and 2. So you don't necessarily need to have the hardest game of your lives in that one. But I think it's going to be fascinating to see what the Lions look like tonight against Argentina and how they're able to build the game plan. Not being challenged isn't necessarily a problem, but I think you do want to be a bit more battle-hardened. I always remember in 2017 and the Lions losing a number of the fixtures that they played. What was it in 2017? Let me just check a second. Of how many games they lost in the build-up there. Because I remember watching the warm-up games and thinking, that was right. So they lost to the Blues and they lost to the Highlanders. Beat the Chiefs, beat the Maori All Blacks, beat the Crusaders in a close game, beat the Provincial Barbarians in a close game, and all those scores actually. So 13-7 win for the Lions, 22-16 loss, 12-3 win against the Crusaders, 23-22 loss against the Highlanders, 32-10 against the Maori All Blacks, and then 34-6 against the Chiefs. So not the games that you necessarily see when like they tour Australia and they tour South Africa, where they are so one-sided. I suppose the flip side to that argument, and any of you that have watched the channel for a while will know that I like to try and think of both sides of the argument. I suppose the counter argument to what I'm saying would be, it's the end of a long season. The players have played for their club. Some of them have just won silverware if they play for Bath and they play for Leinster. Northampton players got to a Champions Cup final. You don't necessarily need a bruising kind of pre-season, if you can call it that, to get you prepared for a Lions series. The training's almost as valuable as the game time is keeping yourself fit and working on combinations. So let's see what happens. Give me your thoughts though. How much of a test do you think the Lions are going to be given in the tour games, the warm-up games, whatever you want to call them, out here in Australia? Do you agree with me? Brumbies and Reds, those are the two that I think could pose the most problems. We'll see what the Western Force have to say about that, because I think they are a club on the rise, but we'll wait and see. Comment down below, like the video as well, and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.